This is a 3-section presentation. There'll be section 1, a discussion point, a complete tangent, and then let you take the discussion point and discuss it amongst yourselves at the tables. And then we'll come back to that discussion point, and I will go around randomly, maybe pick 3 tables at a time, and I'll try to get to all tables, what their takeaway was from their discussion of that discussion point. And I'll do that for every section. So keeps me on my toes, keeps you on your toes, and I hope that feels like an experience that we're all learning from together. A couple of other things about my background that I think might help where I'm coming from is I've been in the financial technology and essentially finance with Fortune 500s and 100s or whatever for the last 17 years. And I've come through and worked in regional offices, country offices, and global offices in Australia, Singapore, and the United States for 2 big guys, American Express and Citibank. And that's taught me a lot about repeating like the same mistakes and kind of watching that definition of insanity that people use in corporate be repeated en masse every time in a big way. And we seem to be evolving in a way where, and that's kind of what my topic is getting at, which is we've got to strip back and go back to the roots of what we're trying to achieve, then add all the complex layers on top of it and grow it and scale it. This is what this is about. It's really a philosophical discussion, something for your brain to ponder, chew on and reflect on, and change the way you look at how you do your work and the way your colleagues and your company does work. So that's why it's called emphasizing the I in IT, because people say information technology. And what IT is, people talk about fixing the computers, fixing the printer, setting up infrastructure. There's very little emphasis on what that I used to be, which was we want to figure out a way to actually appreciate and evolve with the information that we have about our customers, about our surroundings, about the economy, about anything, to make that part of our business model and enrich it and evolve it. And I think we've kind of taken that as a secondary to the whole thing. This is what this topic is about. So first is this. I just quickly wrote some key buzzwords that we hear about all the time and did like a word cloud for them, just to demonstrate that there's a lot of stuff going out there. Some of it seems like it's unrelated, disconnected, but all of them really come down to that root, which is when we talk about Agile, data analytics, artificial intelligence, and the lean startup mentality, learning and machine learning, it all is about better understanding of information. But none of this can happen on its own. Just buying a better box or hiring whatever, a vision, a true north. It's on and off, yeah? No worries. Is it on? Oh, it's off. Hello? Okay. A vision and a true north that you must stick with, and I'll put this down because now my hands are full. And like a true north, basically. What is your true north? And how do you evolve with that, as opposed to something that I hear a lot, and I hear it at senior levels, and it's kind of disturbing when you hear things like, and it may not be exactly word for word, but you hear things like, what we want to do is get all the information we have about our customers into a data lake, and then use some Hadoop, and then we'll get insights. And I hear that more often than I should. And I kind of go, well, okay, how do you think those insights will happen? Oh yeah, because we're going to hire this great company that will do this data warehouse thing. I'm like, that's not it. I mean, could you do what you want to do without all that technology, right? First. So, have a think about that for a minute. So, oops, what did I do? Okay, great. So basically with point 1, information, specifically client-oriented information, should be the focus of any enterprise. Tabulation to spreadsheet, whole rooms to desktops, data centers to the cloud. These are the evolutions of the technology side of information technology, the thing that's been getting the most hype over the last, century. And that's why we've lost focus, I think. When you look at that tabulation to spreadsheet, this was a primitive computer. And essentially you had whole rooms full of men and women tabulating what ends up being one Excel spreadsheet now on your computer. That's what they were doing. That's what these people were doing. And then you had whole rooms to desktop. This is a vacuum tube computer. And yeah, I mean, yeah, look at it. And all it did really was do calculations pretty quickly, like a very advanced calculator. And essentially that's all computers ever have been, but it was a relatively faster one than a human being, you know, like not much, not great though. But it could crack codes. And then you had data center to the cloud, where we thought that we had to have fixed infrastructure and a footprint that we had to work off. That is not necessarily a necessity anymore. And a lot of great things have happened to make that happen, but we have to appreciate that and leverage off that. But these are the technologies that we have now. And we are now at that stage where I think the technology is mature enough to, here, processing massive amounts of data is now available to those that have the imagination, empathy, and dedication to use it. In other words, you've got the processing power now. That is done. That's not a differentiator for anybody. A little startup can access the Amazon cloud. You know, someone else can install Microsoft Excel and start getting their business case built. There isn't a differentiator in having amazing tech first. The tech has to be applied to a problem. And how you measure that problem and the discipline you use around that problem and how you keep evolving that takes imagination, because you should be able to think broadly and conceptually about things and then do them and then measure them and understand them. You need empathy. What is it you're fixing for your customer? What was the problem? Did you identify the problem properly in the first place? Get in their head. And dedication, because it's not going to be an easy fix. It's not going to be something you do in even 12 months or whatever. It's going to be iteratively, you know, monthly changes, maybe even faster if you get good at it. So, the discussion point is, we've got these buzzwords and we've got these concepts that we just spoke about. What does this mean to you as a customer and a creator? And I mean customer here as in you are a customer of other companies. What does that mean to you, knowing that this is available as a customer? What would you like to have happen for the products you have that you use as a customer? That's the empathy. Let's start that. And as a creator, we're all creators in this room. We all contribute to something. As a creator, what does this mean to you? And then if we set our sights to the future, where is the hockey puck going? So while you ruminate on this, I'll quickly tell you about the Fairlight computer music instrument. This has nothing to do with the talk today. However, I wanted to throw some mixes of randomness into this. This was the first music computer ever invented. It had a touch, basically what we'd call a touch screen, but using a light pen instead of a touch with your fingers. It had a full set of keyboards, a computer keyboard. It was the first sampler sequencer ever invented, and by 2 Australians, so it makes me very proud. And they made different iterations of it. And most people, I think, have forgotten about what this was. But all these people that you see here, and I'm hoping at least one of these people is a favorite of yours in some way, used the Fairlight to make their music. And it was part of, essentially, music from then on, until now, actually. There are still people who use the Fairlight as it stands today, but it's a full sequencer. What we talk about with GarageBand or Logic Pro or whatever these tools are that people make music, it was doing back in the late 70s. So, back to the topic. If it's okay, I'd like to give everyone, say, how many minutes to talk? 5 minutes? Great. 5, give or take, about this topic. And then I will throw back to you guys to then say, what did you take away from that? Okay. Hey everybody, back from break. So I just want to go quickly around the tables. I'm just going to point to you guys and then we'll go to the next topic. So let's start with this table over here. What would be one takeaway for you as a table that you would want to contribute to this discussion?
If you don't mind, just introduce who you are and people can know.
Hi, my name is Scott Henderson. I'm with Luminix Corporation. mentioned you're a runner, and Nike kind of has all your information, but they still will continue to provide content, whether it be about basketball or about shoes or what have you. And so it's the opportunity for a manufacturer or a brand to engage with the consumer. And then so kind of how do we take that as marketers or experienced folks and turn that on to our benefit?
That's great. This table over here. Don't be shy.
Well, hey, thank you. Basically, just netted it out. We were just talking about some of the things that we've been involved with, but I really like the way that Dennis put this. It's just really being able to create, personalized and predictive engagement models and experiences at scale with your customer base.
Cool. Yeah, that's good too. All right, great. Let's go to the next session, this next one topic. So, what truly links all successful companies is an unrelenting curiosity and maniacal focus on the needs of the client. So, we went from the macro and the data and everything and to the micro, like that individual. And it was a great segue, actually, from what you were saying and what you were saying, I think. It played well to the transition. Have a process to understand the needs of your clients, current and potential. So, yes, your current clients first. Acquiring a client is expensive. You got them. Service them. Deepen that relationship. Understand them. And focus on them. Don't be like, we got you through the door. You're not our problem anymore. We're going to market to the next guys. If you deepen that relationship, you're going to have a better understanding of those people and actually build on greatness in what you had. Test and learn everything all the time. People need to understand the term test and learn. It does not mean it's something that you do in pilot or something that you do in a POC environment, proof of capability or concept environment. This is a philosophy. This is your life. Essentially, once you have a product out there, you iterate, iterate, iterate. You break that up into its features and sub-feature components. You figure out what's driving those things, what's working for it and what isn't. Get rid of the noise and decommission components. Invest more in those things that are working, and your product is actually going to be maturing organically. And that is a hard concept. When you hear that, you think, it's like a pithy statement. It's like some sort of throwaway line. But when you figure out what your customers wanted, which features were working, and what about those they liked, because you're constantly doing this, you're going to be able to enhance the right things at the right time, not invest in the right things at the right time, and that helps you say no more often. And say yes to the right things, and then give that maniacal focus. Finally, that's sustainable growth, which I was building up to here, building on what came before on the shoulders of giants. If you're nailing what you're doing right now, and it's not the coolest tech in the world, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Your customers are using it because they like what it is, whether it's got a great tech underneath or whatever. If it's cost effective for you as a business and it's working for you, you don't have to throw it out because you had Word version, 11 and version 12 came out, so Word's garbage now, Word 11. That's a lot of the mentality I see in the IT sort of approach to things where the T is the dominant thing. We could be using the old thing and patching it and it's working and it's not breaking down, and people are like, well, but that's old, one day it'll break. But I mean, okay, let's measure that one day. Let's assess the risks. Let's understand what it is and figure out what parts of that can stay the way they are. That way you are getting the most out of your investments and you're not always chasing your tail on the depreciation of what you've put in. Because it's like, oh, we put it in, now we have to wait 3 to 5 years for this thing to work out, and then we have to replace it again. No, you don't. If it's working, figure out what's working and then build on that, because it's about your customer, not about your technology. Next one. Right. This is a person. They are a thought leader. And essentially what we're saying here is, this slide is talking to what are the attributes that I think, and this is obviously my take, it's not a scientific thing, it's a use case of one with the experience I have. What is it that we're looking for the thought leaders of the future that we're going to be hiring in our company or exist in our company today? What's the training that we need them to do? What is it that we really need people to do to step up and into this new world of appreciation of the micro and then scaling to the macro, right? Empathetic, and customer-centric. And I think that speaks to what we've already talked about, I think, already. High levels of openness, integrity, and honesty. I know that I don't know, and that's okay. Putting on a strong face, pretending you have all the answers, makes you look like that example I told you with the Hadoop and the Insights guy. You don't want a senior talking like that. You know, that is not what you want to be, because we have to look good. That is not what it's about. It's about being confident in what you know and what you don't know. Quite a tangent on this, but I think it's relevant, in that Peter Jackson, before making the Lord of the Rings trilogy, had never made a movie of that level ever. Not even close. He'd made independent films. And they asked him, you've got the right attitude to lead this direction, this production, because you don't. You are open, and you are empathetic. You are willing to know what you don't know, and then bring in the people that need to do their bits, and be willing to give them the free reins to do it, and keep to your vision. That is what a great company runs like, and can be nimble that way. Highly coachable, and also open to providing constructive feedback to make a stronger team. It's a two-way street. We talk about people being coachable, but we never say we also want them to contribute to that coaching for others. And I think that, to be honest with you, I personally feel like there's a vulnerability in just being told you have to be coachable. But if you say, no, it's a two-way street, it genuinely is. We've got to be constructive with each other, be honest, be empathetic. You see how this is all building on top of each other, right? And then highly collaborative when in a team environment. And a yes and approach, which is, you know, from improv, essentially, let's build on each other's ideas, not knock them down. Don't be the guy that says, oh, no, but, you know, and then just kill it. I mean, the yes and forces you to reflect on other people's ideas instead of reflexively shooting them down because it might make you feel better in that moment. And yeah, being self-driven and independent. You have to be able to do that. Obviously, there's going to be a time where you have to go off and do your bit separately. You should be able to do that without hand-holding too much, right? Curious with a lean startup mentality. If you haven't read the book Lean Startup, I recommend it for everyone here. Even if you read the cheat notes or whatever, it's brilliant. He nailed down how to, essentially how to do an entrepreneurial method applicable to every situation. I think that there's a lot there that can be taken in. However, can navigate a large company. And this applies more to me and my experience and the companies that we have to deal with. But it also applies for people who are in small companies, like some of you are, and medium-sized companies who then have to partner with a big company. You have to be able to understand those big companies too, because they can make or break you. If you're selling to them, if you're working with them, you have to understand their structures, their cultures, how they work. And a lot of them are pretty similar. Like essentially, Fortune 500s or basically big bureaucracies run the same. There is a level of scale, and that structure always ends up being a large bureaucratic model. Evidence-based critical thinking. I'm going to say it again. Evidence-based critical thinking. Being a skeptic is good. It's not good enough just to be a negative Nancy, though. You have to be an evidence-based critical thinker. What is it that makes you not like this idea? Tell us with evidence. And information-driven, both financial, about your business case and your drivers, and customer and solution-driven. What am I fixing for this customer? How much is it going to cost? How much am I going to recoup? How do I make this appetizing from the ground up? Ability to meld platform and product strategy. It's not good enough to understand marketing strategy. It's not good enough to understand servicing strategy. It's not good enough to be a great tech whiz. You have to understand how that platform, the technology, will meld with the product strategy, that it's actually going to be a sustainable roadmap for your customers' benefits. If you don't have to build the stadium first and you can just build the baseball diamond and have people attend, do that. Don't build the stadium first. And you need to appreciate how to keep building on that greatness. So in other words, melding platform and product. You have to be able to speak to all groups. Oh, an ability to turn strategy into tactics. Not everyone gets to be the chief, but everyone else who appreciates the vision can then execute on that vision without everything being spelt out to them every day. You know, GE with their dress code, dress appropriately, is a good example of that. That is their dress code, dress appropriately. I'm going to give you that succinct vision, and then you go off and build on that because you're an intelligent person that I've hired. You know, so that's the tactical execution. So it all sums up to, in my mind, Being agile means having a true north based on a measurable customer need and solid information, because your information is as good as it is today. It's going to have to get better all the time and more accurate. And based on roadmaps and meaningful scorecards. The roadmap should be real and adaptive and living, and the scorecard should be measurable and actually something that you feed back into everything that you output. And again, I don't see it as enough as I should. So your next topic. Six Sigma, Lean Startup, Agile, these are all different ways of processing the information and understanding it, and it can be done at a very low scale, whiteboard level, to a massive, mini tab system matrix with the lakes and everything. So it's not about the thing, it's about the imagination you're going to put into it. How many of these traits that we talked about before as knowledge leaders do you have? How many are you willing to learn? Which ones do your colleagues and direct reports have? Which ones do your seniors have? And I want you to be honest about that in thinking about it, and be willing to, I'm happy for you to challenge me and say, everyone in my company knows this, that's great, and that's fantastic, you're probably ahead of the curve. And I'm happy for you to say, well, actually reflecting on these, maybe these are the things we have to learn, these are the things others have to learn, and we can work better with each other. If you think there's something I missed in those traits, a critical thing that you thought Sam missed a major pillar, I want to hear that after we come back from the break. Now the break. Assembly of complex plant fungus networks. It has been an amazing discovery recently that the trees and the funguses you see in a forest are actually connected by a network that looks like the internet. And essentially, in a forest, you could think of it as a closed loop system where trees on this side of the forest and trees on that other side of the forest can actually talk to each other through the network. And they can tell each other about dangers, diseases, predators and things like that, that they can actually then change their chemical chemistry, like chemical molecules and other things that they can produce to handle that. If the other ones here, for example, maybe aren't getting enough sunlight, these guys may be ready to handle winter better. And so they adapt to each other, they handle diseases. This has been measured and it's mind-blowing. So it's called Assembly of Complex Plant Fungus Networks. The link is there. You guys, I guess, will get the presentation at the end of this, and so you can actually research this, and it's one of those fascinating topics that we're learning about, and the intelligence of all the living things around us. So back to your discussion point, and I'll leave you to it now. Another 5 minutes. So the table at the back, I'd like to hear what your point on this discussion could be.
Hi, one of your comments that resonated with me, we were just talking about, was the iterative process of constantly improving things. And I think if you have that mindset, you're going to always be moving your products, your technology, and your things forward.
I can hear you. Yeah, I totally agree.
I like
yeah.
that a lot.
Cheers. Let's go to the final section. So. You've heard of these companies, and some of you should probably be up on this slide as well. But as I get to know you, I'll be able to add you. These companies that consistently rise above others are the ones that methodically invest in and innovate on information. Apple, with their famous, it's not about saying yes, it's about saying no. It is a focus on the right things at the right time and the investment in the right area. And they're a hardware company, essentially, but they release their hardware with its software and its ecosystem iteratively. So they will release one component. I'm trying to think of an example of that off the top of my head, but they will release like one component of something and see how it does in the market, and if it works, then they'll make it a bigger thing or make it a separate product or something like that. And so essentially they keep iterating on that in hardware terms, even though they're a hardware company and the software then also evolves with that hardware. They regularly are famous for also getting rid of features that someone fell in love with, but the usage is just not there, and they don't want to keep maintaining a feature that people don't use on enough volume. So they regularly will get very upset, people going, hey, I really love this version of KEYNOTE, and you got rid of that one feature that I used, and they figured out not many people use it, and they had to keep this legacy code in there. They're willing to say no, and that's hard. My company, personally, I find that that's a challenge for us. We don't want to upset anyone, even if you have 10 people using something, but they really love it. Google, again, all of these people we have, like these companies, we have emotions around them, good and bad, and they're not perfect companies by any means. So I'm not trying to put them up there in every value, but their value around how they innovate on information is what I'm focused on. You know, Google, with their constant iteration and understanding of the information they have and how they can carve it and then take it in and keep building on it. That is something they didn't necessarily have to do. They could have just done the advertising and nailed the advertising market, which is their model. People forget that. That's why they can do all the other cool stuff. But essentially, the cool stuff is turning into other products. Toyota, we know them. They're part of, you know, this forum, and they take a lot of care in how they produce. They invented lean on hardware. Then they applied the lean that came out of startups to software, and that's brilliant. Facebook, yeah, love them or hate them. But essentially, they crafted that personalization for the customers and how to get them to stick. When I say customers, you know what I mean. But essentially, the users. And then Netflix, again, taking a leaf from Amazon is the whole, you like this, you might like this. And they actually build shows based on that. So the way they actually produce shows is figuring out there's a cross-section of people that would like this other show that doesn't exist because we've seen them watch 2 different types of shows and there's enough of them to do this. House of Cards is Netflix, was a Netflix show, right? They created that based on people's viewing habits of different shows, and they found a new customer segment based on that. Amazon, of course, you know, they're really good at all the other stuff that we don't think about, which is the cloud technology, which it's essentially, they are the ones who have led to this cloud revolution. It happened like that. It wasn't something that would have happened any other way. No government was willing to build it or leverage it or anything. These guys built it, and the stock market let them lose money on it, and it was okay. And now we've got cloud, and you know, that's the way I'm looking at it. And Intel, of course, they are hard data people. It's all about the transistors, how many can I fit on this chip? And it was constantly improving, improving. Sure, the curve is flattening out now, but that was the rate of improvement on that. And Moore's law, which wasn't a law at all, it was, you know, Moore was the CEO, and he said this, is something that they were able to achieve for so long, for decades, through that constant hard focus on data. Now, what's the next thing? Okay, so company cultures will have to change. They have to adapt and they have to deepen. They have to. This is not a choice, this is not a thing that you can get away with. You just have to make sure you change in the right direction and understand in the right direction how you're going to go. And you have to do that with your North Star, with your vision, with information, with analytics, with your customers, right? You go with your customers. So, this is a quicker, you know, third round. But discuss changing the way every department does business every day to put information front and center to what they do and how they do it in your company. Think about that. What processes help you to do this today in your company and why? Which ones do not and why not? What are you willing to get rid of to improve? What are you willing to add to improve? What could you start doing that you haven't been doing, and who would you have to get involved? Either other departments, other companies, other people in your company that you're not working with today, to move the needle in the right data-driven direction. How do you get to the point, and what is it that you have to change and deepen and adapt to do this? So that is the last discussion point, and I'll pick the last 2 tables as part of that. So it's coming. Now, what's the tangent? Little Richard. Some people probably thought that was Bruno Mars. Essentially, Little Richard is one of those godfathers of music that I think is completely underappreciated. The living legend is alive today. How do I put this? Bruno Mars, like I said, Michael Jackson, The Weeknd, Elvis Presley, The Beatles, David Bowie, many more have been influenced directly from this guy. You talk about cross-dressing on stage, he did it first. You talk about girls screaming at you and throwing the clothes at you, he did it first. The inventors of rock and roll, he was one of the founders. And this guy just does not get mentioned enough. If you read his Wikipedia page, you'll know what I mean. And it blows your mind that this guy was the guy. Like, I mean, anything you can think about pop music today, he probably did it first. There was very few things that these guys did not break in the 50s and 60s. The norms, the fashions, everything. And this guy was there. When, you know, essentially when it was dangerous to be gay, this guy came out and cross-dressed and performed in drag with makeup in front of his audience, and they loved it. And, he broke down like racial boundaries and all that stuff. And, he was out there, and he's still out there, and he's still a loved man. So I thought it was good to acknowledge him today. All right, last discussion. First of all, it's been great to hear all the lively discussion, and I'm really happy with this. I think this is what we need as a group, as an industry, as a forum. So, 2 more tables to go. What are your thoughts about the last section?
Yeah, my name is Julian. I'm with 10X Commercial. So my thought on this was we just did something very similar that helped our process. We broke down every single stage in our entire process from end to end, and we just pretty much broke it apart into the smallest components. We weren't able to provide solutions at the time, but what we were able to do was just see what was there, to discover what was there. This is something that lasted over maybe 2 months. We're now in the process of taking what we discovered and now refining our process and building some technologies around it. But the main thing was when we got there, the rule was leave your agendas behind. You may have an agenda, leave it behind. It is not part of this discussion. You need to put your lens on like a customer, put yourself in the customer's shoes and be thinking the way that they're thinking when you're coming up with all of these thoughts. So, we're at a point right now where we are building on all of that. So we're looking to take it to the next level.
That's awesome. This table here.
Sure, Dwayne McLeish, Camp Gladiator. So we had consensus that this is a very difficult question to ask, simply because there's so much information. There's 3 groups of people: the ones who really haven't been gathering it over the years, the ones who have it and don't know what to do with it, or ones who have it and don't know how to access it. And so it goes back to fundamentally answering, or at least talking about the question you asked before. What are the right questions to ask? And right now, it's a very, very difficult answer to that question, because we're doing something new in an industry that's old, and we don't know the questions to ask yet. And so we're really kind of digging into the information. And I think that's a pretty general consensus amongst a lot of the people that I get to talk to. So I don't know if anybody has anything else to add.
Great. To add to what you said, though, it seems daunting, but you need to come up with a minimum viable product. We didn't talk about that today as much, but essentially you get to a position where you're like, I have to do something to get something. So I know this much about the industry, I know this much about this product that we're doing. These are all the questions that we don't have the answers for. People call them assumptions. I just say they're questions. I don't know. Let's just write them as questions. And then these are the questions we're going to answer with the iterations as we try it out. And they may be market research questions. They may be beta questions. One of the great stories that one of my ex-bosses told us was one of the companies that she worked for, they put a link on their website to a product that didn't exist. And they measured how many people clicked on it. And the thing was, when they clicked on it, it would say, we have this product coming soon, write your email here so we can tell you more when it comes out. And that was the first thing they did, just to see what the appetite was. Because if no one clicked on it or no one put their email down, then they're like, well, maybe we shouldn't really be pursuing this as hard as we were. And that was cheap, because again, it's about the empathy and knowing your customers and your potential customers. Yeah. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, but relevant to this particular discussion, though, how do you then rally? Because if you don't know the questions to ask, how do you rally departments in your company to be making the right product, especially in a lean, agile environment where waste is, for some companies, is pretty devastating? Yeah,
it's more like a decision-making thing. Like, you want to make decisions to move forward, right? In other words, you have your North Star, you have your vision statement that's in plain English, no jargon, no nothing. So you go, okay, I've got this thing. We all believe in this thing, right? Yes. Okay, it's measurable. That's the first thing. Is it? Yes. Okay, great. So it's a measurable vision, succinct, understood. Great. Then, when you get those departments involved, it's a matter of going, what do you need to know about this vision first? And that starts unraveling questions, because more and more people are going to ask you, what do you mean by this? And how will that actually apply to what I do today? And you're like, well, what do you think you're doing today? Are we doing it? Okay, so what do you think you would have to change? Suddenly you get a whole bunch of questions. Every department's going to have reams of questions, and that's good. Because what you need is curiosity. I don't know if I had that as one of the attributes, but that is an attribute that people need, is that curiosity to peel back what they're doing every day and ask the question, is this the right thing to work on? And that's how you start. And then you just keep going and going, and then figure out the things you don't know to at least start building the MVP, and then to figure out that the MVP should answer questions for you. As opposed to making a product that's going to make you money. That MVP could be a complete failure, but it's not a failure in the sense that it gives you research and insights that you have no other way of knowing until you put it out there. That's the thing, right? And I think it's very nerve-wracking. Most people don't want to do that. And what big banks do, in my experience, in Australia especially, and in the US as well, and Europe, they put out a brand that isn't their brand, doing something radical, going, we're a new cool bank, look, we're cool. And then people are like, oh, this is a cool bank. And then they're like, oh, this is what people like about this product. Let's now bring that back into our portfolio. So they did that with less risk, that way. If it was a disaster, they'd say, oh, we were just underwriters for those guys, and move on. So I hope that makes sense. And then, yeah, this is the last slide. Just, crawl, walk, run, fly. So this is just something I want you guys to kind of think about, again, that, you have to start crawling to then fly, and that's okay. Have the path to get there and be patient and be iterative. It is a patience game. It isn't necessarily like, hey, now that you know how to approach this, it's going to happen quicker, but it will happen iteratively faster, as opposed to big chunks of failure, which you don't want.